He spoke in calm good taste, without any of the oratory that either terrifies or seduces. By any fascination of manner? His was only correct and agreeable. By what was it, then? Merely by sense, industry, good principles, and a good heart, qualities which no well-constituted mind need ever despair of attaining. It was the force of his character that raised him, and this character was not impressed on him by nature, but formed, out of no peculiarly fine elements, by himself. There were many in the House of Commons of far greater ability and eloquence, but no one surpassed him in the combination of an adequate portion of these with moral worth. Horner was born to show what moderate powers, unaided by anything whatever except culture and goodness, may achieve, even when these powers are displayed amidst the competitions and jealousies of public life. 100 years hence, what difference will it make whether you were rich or poor, a peer or a peasant? But what difference may it not make whether you did what was right or what was wrong? At a large dinner party given by Lord Stratford after the Crimean War, it was proposed that everyone should write on a slip of paper the name which appeared most likely to descend to posterity with renown. When the papers were opened, every one of them contained the name of Florence Nightingale. Professor Blackie of the University of Edinburgh said to a class of young men, "Money is not needful. Power is not needful. Liberty is not needful. Even health is not the one thing needful. But character alone is that which can truly save us. And if we are not saved in this sense, we certainly must be damned." It has been said that when poverty is your inheritance, virtue must be your capital. Hence it was, said Franklin, speaking of the influence of his known integrity of character, that I had so much weight with my fellow citizens. I was but a bad speaker, never eloquent, subject to much hesitation in my choice of words, hardly correct in language, and yet I generally carried my point. When a man's character is gone, all is gone. All peace of mind, all complacency in himself is fled forever. He despises himself. He is despised by his fellow men. Within is shame and remorse. Without, neglect and reproach. He is of necessity a miserable and useless man. He is so, even though he be clothed in purple and fine linen, and fare sumptuously every day. It is better to be poor, it is better to be reduced to beggary, it is better to be cast into prison, or condemned to perpetual slavery, than to be destitute of a good name, or endure the pains and the evils of a conscious worthlessness of character. The time is soon coming when, by the common consent of mankind, it will be esteemed more honorable to have been John Pounds, putting new and beautiful souls into the ragged children of the neighborhood while he mended his father's shoes, than to have sat upon the British throne. The time now is when, if Queen Victoria, in one of her magnificent progresses through her realms, were to meet that more than American queen, Miss Dix, in her circumnavigation of charity among the insane, the former should kneel and kiss the hand of the latter, and the ruler over more than 100 millions of people should pay homage to the angel whom God has sent to the maniac. At your age, said to a youth an old man who had honorably held many positions of trust and responsibility, both position and wealth appear enduring things, but at mine a man sees that nothing lasts but character. Several eminent clergymen were discussing the qualities of self-made men. They each admitted that they belonged to that class, except a certain bishop, who remained silent, and was intensely absorbed in the repast. The host was determined to draw him out, and so, addressing him, said, "All at this table are self-made men, unless the bishop is an exception." The bishop promptly replied, "I am not made yet." And the reply contained a profound truth. So long as life lasts, with its discipline of joy or sorrow, its opportunities for good or evil, so long our characters are being shaped and fixed. Milton said, "He who would write heroic poems must make his whole life an heroic poem." We are responsible for our thoughts, and unless we could command them, mental and moral excellence would be impossible. Charles Kingsley has well said, "Let anyone set his heart to do what is right and nothing else, and it will not be long ere his brow is stamped with all that goes to make up the heroic expression, with noble indignation, noble self-restraint, great hopes, great sorrows, perhaps even with the print of the martyr's crown of thorns." Said James Martineau, "God insists on having a concurrence between our practice and our thoughts. If we proceed to make a contradiction between them, he forthwith begins to abolish it. And if the will not rise to the reason must be degraded to the will." When I say, in conducting your understanding, says Sidney Smith, "Love knowledge with a great love, with a vehement love, with a love coeval with life," what do I say but love innocence, love virtue, love purity of conduct, love that which, if you are rich and great, will vindicate the blind fortune which has made you so, and make them call it justice; love that which, if you are poor, will render your poverty respectable, and make the proudest feel that it is unjust to laugh at the meanness of your fortunes; love that which will comfort you, adorn you, and never quit you, which will open to you the kingdom of thought, and all the boundless regions of conception, as an asylum against the cruelty, the injustice, and the pain that may be your lot in the world; that which will make your motives habitually great and honorable, and light up in an instant 1,000 noble disdains at the very thought of meanness and of fraud. The Arabs express this by a parable that incarnates, as is their wont, the word in the recital. King Nimrod, say they, one day summoned his 3 sons into his presence. He ordered to be set before them 3 urns under seal. One of the urns was of gold, another of amber, and the third of clay. The king bade the eldest of his sons choose among the urns that which appeared to him to contain the treasure of greatest price. The eldest chose the vase of gold, on which was written the word Empire. He opened it and found it full of blood. The second chose the amber vase, whereon was written the word Glory. He opened it and found it contained the ashes of the great men who had made a sensation in the world. The third son took the only remaining vase, the one of clay. He found it quite empty, but on the bottom the potter had written the word God. Which of these vases weighs the most? Asked the king of the courtiers. The men of ambition replied it was the vase of gold, the poets and conquerors the amber one, the sages that it was the empty vase, because a single letter of the name of God weighs more than the entire globe. We are of the opinion of the sages. We believe the greatest things are great, but in the proportion of divinity they contain. Although genius always commands admiration, says Smiles, character most secures respect. The former is more the product of brain power, the latter of heart power, and in the long run it is the heart that rules in life. Men of genius stand to society in the relation of its intellect, as men of character of its conscience, and while the former are admired, the latter are followed. Commonplace though it may appear, this doing of one's duty embodies the highest ideal of life and character. There may be nothing heroic about it, but the common lot of men is not heroic, and though the abiding sense of duty upholds man in his highest attitudes, it also equally sustains him in the transaction of the ordinary affairs of everyday existence. The most influential of all the virtues are those which are the most in request for daily use. They wear the best and last the longest. We can always better understand and appreciate a man's real character by the manner in which he conducts himself toward those who are the most nearly related to him, and by his transaction of the seemingly commonplace details of daily duty, than by his public exhibition of himself as an author, an orator, or a statesman. Intellectual culture has no necessary relation to purity or excellence of character. On the contrary, a condition of comparative poverty is compatible with character in its highest form. A man may possess only his industry, his frugality, his integrity, and yet stand high in the rank of true manhood. Character is property. It is the noblest of possessions. It is an estate in the general goodwill and respect of men, and they who invest in it, though they may not become rich in this world's goods, will find their reward in esteem and reputation fairly and honorably won. Without principles, a man is like a ship without rudder or compass, left to drift hither and thither with every wind that blows. What a contrast is afforded by the lives of Bacon and More! Bacon sought office with as much desire as More avoided it. Bacon used as much solicitation to obtain it as More endured to accept it, and each, when in it, was equally true to his character. More was simple, as Bacon was ostentatious. More was as incorruptible as Bacon was venal. More spent his private fortune in office, and Bacon spent the wages of corruption there. Both left office poor in worldly goods, but while More was rich in honor and good deeds, Bacon was poor in everything, poor in the mammon for which he bartered his integrity, poor in the God for which he sacrificed his peace, poor in the presence of the worthless, covered with shame in the midst of the people, trusting his fame to posterity, of which posterity is only able to say that the wisest of men was adviser to the silliest of kings, yet that such a king had a sort of majesty when morally compared with the official director of his conscience. Both More and Bacon served each a great purpose for the world. More illustrated the beauty of holiness. Bacon expounded the infinitude of science. Bacon became the prophet of intellect, More the martyr of conscience. The one pours over our understandings the light of knowledge, but the other inflames our hearts with the love of virtue. All have read of the proud Egyptian king who ordered a colossal staircase built in his new palace, and was chagrined to find that he required a ladder to climb from one step to the next. A king's legs are as short as those of a beggar. So too, a prince's ability to enjoy the pleasures of life is no greater than that of a pauper. All that is valuable in this world is to be had for nothing. Genius, beauty, health, piety, love, are not bought and sold. The richest man on earth would vainly offer a fortune to be qualified to write a verse like Milton, or to compose a melody like Mozart. You may summon all the physicians, but they cannot procure for you the sweet, healthful sleep which the tired laborer gets without price. Let no man, then, call himself a proprietor. He owns but the breath as it traverses his lips, and the idea as it flits across his mind. And of that breath he may be deprived by the sting of a bee, and that idea, perhaps, truly belongs to another. We live in deeds, not years; in thoughts, not breaths; in feelings, not in figures on a dial. We should count time by heart throbs. He most lives who thinks most, feels the noblest, acts the best, and he whose heart beats quickest lives the longest. End of chapter 21.